In 1995, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie was released in theaters. Based on the hit TV show from 1993, the film brought back pretty much the entire cast of the main series. The 6 actors currently playing the Rangers on the show were in the film. The actors who played Bulk and Skull showed up. The voices for all the main villains were there. Zordon was like a new guy and it was kinda... The breakout star of the film was the supervillain Ooze, a morphological being made out of purple slime and goo and ooze, who was unearthed and then usurps Rita Repulsa and Lord Zed and starts his own conquest to dig up his own Zords and take over Earth. Considering the film was using a cast of not great actors from a children's television show, they needed a little star power to fill out the rest of the cast. So Ooze was played by the obvious choice. My grandpa. So you probably won't believe this, and honestly I didn't believe it at first when I first heard it. If you didn't grow up in the 90s, it's hard to understand the idea of watching one movie over and over and over and over and over again. Nowadays, even movies that we love, we sometimes watch them once when they are in theaters, and then maybe once again when they come out on home video or streaming, and then we probably never watch them again. I've seen all 3 Star Wars films from the new series. I watched the first one twice in theaters, and I watched the other 2 once, and I haven't seen them ever again. But in the 90s, we didn't have streaming and thousands of hours of movies and TV at our fingertips. So to entertain yourself in the 90s, you probably had to either go outside or watch a VHS. So if you weren't renting them, you were stuck with whatever was in your collection. And my collection was the Power Rangers movie, which I watched all the time. One day I was watching it when my grandparents were visiting from Puerto Rico. And it was on, and they were in the room, and my grandpa just turns to me and said, "You know, I play that guy." And I was like, "What guy?" Ooze was on the screen, so he was like, "That guy, that's me. I was him in the movie." I had no idea that I was related to the star of the greatest film of my childhood. Now I'm sure I told some of my friends about this. I mean, how couldn't you? It's the biggest story of the year. All of these kids were going to preschool with the grandson of Ooze. But you know, it was the 90s. I tell my friend my grandpa was Ooze, he says his uncle works at Nintendo. Before you know it, we're talking about Nintendo. I stuck with Power Rangers for quite a while after that, but the movie kind of faded from memory. You know, it wasn't really replayed on TV a lot, and it didn't get a DVD release, I don't think, until much later. So I just stopped thinking about it for a while. Eventually, I kind of got in and out of Power Rangers again, here or there, depending on, you know, what channel it was on, which during the Disney era, I mean. It wasn't until college that I really got back into it in earnest. The 20th anniversary was about to happen and there was a lot of hype around that. And so I went on a few Wikipedia rabbit holes. The whole franchise is on Netflix, so I watched a bunch of that. And I kind of got to a point where I thought about the movie again. And for the first time in like 15 years, I thought about the movie and I thought about Ooze, who was played by my grandpa. And I found out, like, at the age 20, no, he wasn't. Surprise! Mystery solved. The actor who played Ooze was in fact not my grandfather, it was some guy named Paul Freeman. He was some guy. I know I probably should have figured it out sooner, but like I said, the movie faded to the back of my memory, and I didn't really think about it, but in the back of my memory still was Ooze was played by my grandpa. And I just never questioned it as a child. And then in college, I just kind of figured out, no, that makes no sense. And it wasn't just apparent because if you read the credits, which even a 5-year-old could have figured out a little bit, my grandpa's name wasn't in there. Some guy named Paul Freeman was. Also, looking back, I don't really know how I believed that. Like, yeah, I was a little kid, but like, I knew my grandpa. I don't know how he could have starred in a big Hollywood movie. The guy barely spoke English. I remember once when we were at a place called Taco Maker, which is only in Puerto Rico. It's like a Taco Bell, but it's not. And he asked me what I wanted, and I said I wanted 3 tacos, but with just cheese, no lettuce. Most tacos come with cheese and lettuce. I just wanted cheese. And it took like 5 minutes of standing in line for me to tell this guy what lettuce was. Like, he couldn't figure it out. So how could someone who barely spoke English deliver great lines like this one?
Ladies and gentlemen, the Ooze is back!
So yeah, my grandpa didn't really play Ooze in the Power Rangers movie. But I do like how it stuck with me all these years, and I kind of never really questioned it until I actually read it on like Wikipedia or whatever, you know? I think the reason this story stuck with me for so long was because it's one of the few conversations I remember even having with my grandpa. There's I don't want lettuce on my tacos, and he played Ivan Ooze in the Power Rangers movie. That's really all I remember. In addition to the language barrier, he lived in Puerto Rico where we only visited once every couple of years. Sometimes he would come visit us. And he was already like old when this all started, you know? I mean, he's a grandpa. So we didn't talk much, but I always remember the story from when I was 5 years old, and he convinced me for the next 15 years that he played Ivan Ooze in the Power Rangers movie, which he probably didn't even remember, like, an hour after it happened. It wasn't like some big fish elaborate mythology he convinced me of. It was just an offhanded, yeah, that's me on this TV, you know? And that was it. Looking back, it's actually kind of believable, like, beyond just being a dumb 5-year-old, that this could have happened. Like, look at these two pictures. You can tell there's a lot of similarity there. Here's a picture of my grandpa wearing purple. I mean, come on, that's Ivan Ooze. My grandpa passed away in November 2016. And while he never appeared in any films as far as I know, I will always remember him as the guy who played Ivan Ooze in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. So if you learned anything from this story, I guess, if you have grandkids right now, tell them you played Thanos.